Well, the protest was not even reported, right? Pascal, this is the same playbook. If you look at what DPP has done, we have passed the law so that foreign nationals can now serve in our government. American advisors can work in our government departments. United States has sent more military advisors to Taiwan, which was not present since 1979 when they severed the relationship with us. At the time of 1979, they severed diplomatic relationship. They withdrew all U.S. Military forces, and they also severed the Joint Defense Treaty. There were three conditions in 1979. But now the American advisors are coming back, advising our military. They are also coming back potentially in the government. And those are just happening right now.
Hello everybody, this is Pascal from Neutrality Studies, and today I'm talking again to Dr. Joanna Lei, a Taiwanese businesswoman, media executive and former lawmaker for the Kuomintang Party in the Republic of China, that is, Taiwan of course. Last week there were rather large protests in the capital Taipei against the ruling TPP party and President William Lai. This news got surprisingly little coverage in Western media, which usually is so keen on showing all kinds of people's power movements when they occur against governments the West doesn't like. But this time, rather a wave of silence. That's what we want to talk about today. So, Joanna, welcome back to the channel.
Thank you, Pascal. I'm so glad that you picked this news up because there was almost no Western media coverage at all.
So, A, why is that? B, was it just like a few, like dozen people on the street with flags? Can you describe what these protests looked like?
Well, I've been on the street in the same location many times. From the beginning of the stage to there is a major door at the back. Usually people will claim to have 100,000 to 200. If you go further on the side to the other street, then people would claim to have 300,000 people or more. So this is like the tradition place for protests in Taiwan. This is an extremely large crowd. Initially, they expected about 50,000 people turning up, but the final turnout was 5-10 times from the initial expectation. Okay, now, why was it never covered? In this particular instance, the Kuomintang and People's Party claimed that there were an illegal mass recall of all the existing lawmakers in the legislative yuan. Because the DPP doesn't own majority, they have minority in the legislative yuan, even though they have the entire control of the executive branch, the judicial branch, and our two other branches. So they waged a massive recall to oust all the KMT and People's Party's legislators.
What is a recall?
That is the foundation of that.
What is a recall? What do you mean with that?
Okay, let me say a few words about recall. In our system, we're a single district system, so you need to win pretty much majority in order to win a seat. But you can have 1% of the constituents and 10% of the final number proposing to recall your seat and re-elect a different person. And this recall only require a quarter of the people voting against you. So if you fight and win a seat in a constituency, you will need to win about 50%. But if people opposite to you, probably they will have 40%. So if they use the 40% to recall you, then you will lose your seat. So that's a very strange system in the design. Because DPP didn't win majority in the Congress, they waged a massive all-out recall to recall all KMT legislators. So think about this. In any other country, if you want to do something like this, you dismiss your Congress, right? You dismiss your Congress like Singapore recently did. The new prime minister said, I need a new mandate from people. So let's dismiss the Congress and have a general re-election. That's the normal way of doing it. So whether you are from A party or B party or C party, you all go back to the people and ask for another mandate. But a recall allows A party, in Taiwan's case, DPP, to target B party's legislator without risking A party's seat at all. So this is a very asymmetrical system. Of course, if it's just a fair system, it wouldn't raise so much public protest. I wouldn't call out so many people to the street. However, in this time, we have two things going simultaneously. One is DPP using this as a political struggle tools against opposition party to recall just the opposition legislators. B, they are using judicial tools to protest the counter recall because KMT also say, okay, you recall my people, I will recall your people. But the people who lead the counter recall were being investigated, incarcerated by the judicial system. So both the legislative arm and the executive branch moved in against any political opposition in Taiwan. And that's a really, really big thing. It's making our so-called democracy system dilapidating to a state that you cannot believe because you have standing people's right for free election and free expression. B, you have changed the basic judicial system in terms of its proportionality, due process, and burden of proof because they have incarcerated opposition party chairman Ko Wen-je. They incarcerated people in Taipei KMT headquarters, the general director of Taipei KMT office. She's a 75-year-old woman. They incarcerated her. They also incarcerated young people who lead the counter recall from the KMT camp. So these are all done by using prosecutors, the judicial system. So the deterioration of democracy in Taiwan is beyond belief, and it called out so many people on April 26th, the event you picked up and no Western media reported.
So just let me get this straight. In the US context, if we take the US as an example, this would mean that let's say the Republican Party attacks the Democrats because they don't have enough seat in Congress. They get enough, a quarter of the districts of the seats of the House Representatives to file this motion for a recall, and then they all lose their seats while the Republicans keep their seat. And this is just expected to go on. And if the other party does the same, then those people are being investigated and use judicial methods against them. And that is currently the party that is hailed as the shining beacon of democracy and is also supported naturally by the United States. And if I'm not wrong, then Mr. Lai also is one of the people, of course, who supports a closer relationship with the United States and weapons imports from them and stationing of US troops on Taiwanese soil, isn't it?
You're exactly right. There's just two small modifications. One is, in your example, the Republican Party can target Democratic Party and start a recall process to have another election in the specific district. One. The second part was they not only investigated the counter recall leaders, they incarcerated them. They put them in jail without communication before they have certain proof to prove that they have wrongdoing. They weren't being charged. They are being incarcerated before being charged. And this is our unique system.
How many days can they be incarcerated without being brought in front of a judge? Because this shouldn't be more than a day or two.
No. It's 2 months at a time, renewable for another 2 months. So 4 months.
Without seeing a judge, without even being charged with something.
They were incarcerated by the judge because the prosecutor asked the judge to put them in jail for fear of tampering witnesses or whatever. But let me say one thing. Answer your question first. 2 months at a time. So twice. So it's 4 months. Once it's put to the court, then it can be renewed continuously. Therefore, Ko Wen-je, the leader of the People Party, is now in jail for more than 3 terms, more than 6 months. Okay, now, the reason this is a tampering of our entire judicial system is if you lead a counter recall, right? You ask people to sign the petition. You need 1% vote for the first time, and you need 10% vote of the 10% signature of the second stage. All of this will then be vested by our Central Election Committee. They will check whether these are real people, whether they really supported your motion. This is a very small it's a very small administrative process. Now, the government said, because you are recalling legislator, it involves national security. Therefore, they make a very small crime, a very small procedural issue into a massive crime triable for 5-year term. Because you need to have a severe crime to incarcerate people. So now you can see how terrible the use of judicial system and how it may interrogate people and intimidate any opposition. Now, even the youngest leader, there are some young people, they decided to recall their legislator, waging the so-called counter recall. The youngest people were asked to put bail of a level usually in Taiwan is for major crime. So you can see the overall cooperation from the judicial system, especially the prosecutor side, with the current ruling DPP.
What is this for? I mean, the last large elections in Taiwan they were a year ago, right? The general election. So the current parliament still sits for 3 years, and now the TPP is eradicating the Kuomintang and other opposition forces because it cannot ram through its legislative changes. What are the changes that they can't get through, that they want to get in?
Well, there are two things. One is they claim that the budget was not, the fiscal budget was not approved. Therefore, the government cannot run. So this is a little bit like Donald Trump's view on the opposition. However, if you look at dollar for dollar, this year the Congress passed more fiscal budget than previous years. But there were major problems. For example, our new project on building a submarine. The submarine has a freeze of budget saying that you need to prove of concept before additional budget is allocated. However, that submarine is now reported as a major failure. There were tons of mistakes, and therefore the Congress was actually doing the right thing, saying that you cannot just because of your political agenda fast speed everything. You have to prove that you have proof of concept, you have proof of safety, that you move forward. So the Congress actually freezed some of the budget proposals, saying that you need to come back to report to the Congress and or to propose a revised budget. The legislative did such a reasonable request. The sort of the administrative decided not to put forth their revised budget until the general recall is building momentum. So after the general recall is now building momentum, they finally put their revised budget to the Congress. So you can see this is a little bit of a dance. It's a tango. It's back and forth. Secondly, I think it's more pertinent today. After the tariff war, you know that Taiwan is on the short end. We were asked to move TSMC to the United States. We were asked to buy additional US arm. We were asked to invest in the United States more and perhaps change our foreign exchange, which is a large number, $576 billion, into a longer bond. So all of this were not discussed by the current legislative government in Congress or in public forum. His main mandate to his people were 4 Chinese words, 脱中入北, delinking from China, move into the north, meaning joining the northern countries, which is almost like Zelensky joining NATO. So his overall strategy is 脱中入北, move Taiwan away from China, move into the United States, even by moving our high technology and other things all to the United States, with our foreign reserve largely moving to a US longer bond. All of this are not being discussed in Taiwan public forum at all. Everybody is now talking about the general recall of the KMT legislator, and the counter recall is now being stemmed, and how the judicial system is deteriorating and dilapidating. Let me just repeat one more time. The overall significance of the recent event, especially on April 26th, is one, it shows Taiwan moving into an illiberal democracy in a faster speed than we had anticipated. Secondly, it's also moving Taiwan into a totalitarian direction by having the administrative arm ousting the opposition in the legislative arm using judicial arm. So all of these are moving into a near totalitarian state, while all in all, the major issue confronting Taiwan's economy and future, which is the US tariff war and Taiwan's counter strategy, was not being discussed in the public forum. How terrible is that? And how wonderful is that a democratic value partner of Lai Ching-te to the United States?
This is quite fun. This is quite incredible. And do you actually think that this is also a useful distraction of the public eye away from what actually matters, which is this decision of a not a geopolitical realignment, but a geopolitical a decisive moment when the leadership says, okay, we're going to throw our lot with the Americans and in this upcoming confrontation with China, and now we're going to shed all pretense of maybe maintaining a balance.
Well, certainly Lai Ching-te has a very major speech coming up, May 20th. I suspect he will continue his approach by 脱中入北, delinking from China, moving into the northern camp. He will continue to provoke China, and he will continue to show the United States that we will increase our arms build out, military build out in cooperation with the US strategy in the West Pacific. In fact, his first delegation to Washington has just come back reporting that the advance they made is that whatever we buy in terms of arms procurement from the United States will now be counted to offset our trade balance. So it's not just my imagination that Lai Ching-te is doing this. He is doing this. He is trying to further link up Taiwan with the military plan in the West Pacific by the United States. And this trade tariff will be a timely movement to also tell Taiwan that, hey, by this, we are increasing our security guarantee from the United States. We are greater connected with the US policy. And this all, by the way, help us to negotiate down our tariff. So there were a lot of things going on, but locally, he is trying to use a totalitarian approach to stem the opposition, to increase their political power, and also our local election from the city to city council level will come in just a little bit over a year. So he will strengthen his position in the local election.
And local elections are very important in the Taiwanese context, right? Because they are usually a bellwether for what's to be expected then the next 2 years. And it is a distributed system, a proportional system where you actually get a feeling for the political leanings of the people on the ground. Now,
Right. There are two reasons. Let me just come back to you. Right now, the local election, KMT actually won all the major cities. The mayors of all the major cities are run by the DPP's opposition, KMT runs. And secondly, the local council is a multi-seat system. So you only need certain number of seats. You can secure your seats in the local council, and the People Party may have a greater chance. So the White Party will have a pretty strong chance in winning the local election, and that is why Ke Wen-je, the chairperson of the White Party, is now incarcerated. If you count Ke Wen-je's general election vote, because he also ran for president, right, last time, if you counted his vote, he will probably get 15 to 20% of all the local seats, just based on how many people supported him when he ran for presidency. And that is why Lai Ching-te is trying to stem all the possible growth of the White Party as early as possible. And Ke Wen-je now is in jail without solid proof, without being trialed.
But this is really eerily similar to the process in Ukraine, where within Ukraine you had like opposition politicians and so on being thrown into jail, and also media starting to be banned, and all of that was then, of course, Ukraine still today is hailed by the Europeans and the Euro-Americans as a beacon of democracy, best democracy in Europe. Are
I
you?
think
I
it's the
mean,
same playbook.
The Taiwanese are not as gullible as the Ukrainians, I hope. I mean, these
No, but
protests were there as well now.
well, the protest was not even reported, right? Pascal, this is the same playbook. If you look at what DPP has done, we have passed the law so that foreign nationals can now serve in our government. American advisors can work in our government departments. United States has sent more military advisors to Taiwan, which was not present since 1979 when they severed the relationship with us. At the time of 1979, they severed diplomatic relationship. They withdrew all U.S. Military forces, and they also severed the Joint Defense Treaty. There were three conditions in 1979. And now the American advisors are coming back, advising our military. They are also coming back potentially in the government. And those are just happening right now.
Jesus Christ, that is very scary. That is very frightening because this is like an internal buildup in order to then justify extreme positions. Because I mean, the question is, of course, the only thing that China said is an absolute red line is a declaration of independence
Or foreign intervention.
or for an intervention. But do you think there's a build up towards this to create a momentum for Lai actually standing in front of the cameras and just declaring that from today on it's going to be the Democratic Republic of Taiwan and not the Republic of China anymore that's ruling the government?
Uh, it will probably be more gradual, and that is why I think May 20th, his 1 year anniversary speech will be very, very critical. If he continues to provoke, what we've seen is China's attitude has been extremely strong. After March 11th, they've declared Taiwan Strait as the internal water. So the aerial denial is now drawn to the east of Taiwan, right? So Taiwan Strait is internal water. The denial district is to the east of Taiwan. So if Lai Ching-te does something more provocative on May 20th, and it will be at the backdrop of a potential trade and all-out confrontation between the United States and China. So that particular stance, that position may be used by either side, and that would not benefit Taiwan at all.
But yet Taiwan is economically very dependent on China. I mean, it's your largest trading partner. The US is actually only number two. If China ever did to Taiwan what the United States just did, as in threats of tariffs, what would that do to your economy?
Oh, that would be disastrous because your top technology, like TSMC, and about 85 companies that worked in the supply chain of TSMC, the most valuable part will be taken to the United States, which is a stated purpose of both Trump and supported by Lai Ching-te's overall strategy. So our top-notch technology will move to the United States, and that is his 脱中入北, moving into the north. But our middle part is actually the largest trading part with China. The parts, the computer, information technology, LED, all kinds of components, precision components, Taiwan export to China. And if we don't have the export from TSMC to the United States, then if you lose your middle level technology export to China, what do you have left? You have a service industry, an agricultural base, and local economy. You have no other link with the international trade. So it will be disastrous for Taiwan, and that strategy is cutting one arm, sending your most beautiful girl to the United States, and cutting up your second son and let it die. And I don't understand what Lai Ching-te is doing in terms of helping the people of Taiwan, but I do understand he's advancing his ideology and what he hoped to make a Japanese independent Taiwan. He's never truly Taiwan independent. He is a pro-Japanese Taiwan independence movement proponent.
I don't understand that one because Japan has of course no claims whatsoever. I mean not even rhetorically nothing over Taiwan. The most important thing for Japan is to not have a war over Taiwan because that would automatically draw in Okinawa, right? They are like this close, this close. So why would you have this pro-Japanese Taiwanese like approach by Lai?
Well, for a long, long time, Taiwan independence has two main branches. One is asking for freedom, democracy, mostly from the United States, and that is why they are very close to the Democratic Party because they were the opposition at the time. So that is asking for a general, more wide open democratic system. That's from the Americans. The second branch of Taiwan independence is to continue the glory of the Japanese ruling era. To them, Japan is their motherland in their imagination as well as their aspiration. So from about 1995, from Li Denghui, you started seeing a lot more portrayal of Japan and how that's glorious. And the Japanese ruling time is the heyday of Taiwan. Lai Ching-te belongs to the second camp. His general idea, if you recall, the Japanese politicians at one point said, Taiwan 有事,日本有事. If something happens to Taiwan, it happens to Japan, indicating Japan will support Taiwan and in a unlikely event of whatever China may do to Taiwan. So that is Lai Ching-te's sort of spiritual and aspirational homeland. He has also changed our cultural fabric in recent years. Usually for example, in the entertainment and commercials, you don't use foreign languages. But now only Japanese language commercial can be aired on our public TV, broadcast TV in its entirety. No English commercial can be aired in its entirety, but Japanese commercials can. The Japanese ruling time is being broadcast in the public broadcast station with lots of glorified human stories, wonderful lawyers, great systems, and so on and so forth. So there is a very strong underpinning of leaning towards Japan and the glorious time of Japanese rule in the Lai Ching-te camp. In fact, all of them do underscore this.
But this is really bizarre because again, like there's no claims and there's no appetite in Japan at all to in any way, shape, or form also come to the help of Taiwan. I mean, dying for Taipei is definitely not a slogan. I mean, nobody would support that over here in Japan. Like you would really only get some really crazy nuts who would say like, yes, we need to do that. And apart from that, Japan has self-defense forces and has a clause in its constitution that forbids its military from being deployed abroad. And of course, Taiwan is classified as the abroad. So there is no question about that inside Japan. But what you're saying is that inside this ruling government party, there are people who have this fantasy of Japan.
And it continues to tell people Japan will come to our aid. If you go back to about 2002, the U.S.-Japan treaty has extended to the islands in Okinawa and the it should be called the west-south islands of Okinawa. So they have extended the defense territories to an area very close to Taiwan, Unaku Island, and near Taiwan, east side of Taiwan. Before you enter the Okinawa Trough, there is an area that the U.S. has put X-radar and other things to sort of militarize that area. And during Abe's time, Abe has shown very strong support to Taiwan, especially to the DPP, in particular, Lai Ching-te. So he has an ability to show that they have very strong relationship with political leadership in Japan, even though the stated constitution didn't allow Japan to come out and support Taiwan, but there is a very strong if not solid as rock, because this is what the U.S. term was, if not solid as rock, there is a very strong underlying support to Taiwan. This has been the DPP playbook for a long, long time. They've told people in Taiwan, the United States and Japan will come and support their position. So like you and I have talked about neutrality and how you have to manage tension so that you avoid war. And these are, I think, very dangerous rhetoric to give people wrong illusion. And we should watch very carefully what May 20th he may say.
Yes, yes, I absolutely agree. And if indeed it is the same playbook, then like looking to Ukraine for hints of what's gonna happen is very important, because the thing is that NATO has been supporting Ukraine with everything except the one thing that actually could have done a difference, which is actual troops, right? It's like so. No, you're going to be used as cannon fodder. You're going to be used as implementation partners for a kinetic war. Um, and it would be a very bad illusion if Taiwan thought that the US or Japan would actually come to the help. They give everything to fight something that Japan doesn't want this to be fought, but maybe the United States would, which would be
And I
very.
think the current leadership in Japan is a lot more careful than during the Abe time. They're a lot more careful because the war is pacing, it's threatening, it's more like a reality that's going to happen. So they're a lot more careful in both their languages and their actions.
Yeah, luckily that I would say luckily in this case, also like trying to build new connections with China and South Korea as well. So what is why do you think it is that these protests were so systematically ignored? Is there because you said, I mean, Reuters and Bloomberg and so on, they didn't report on it,
CNN,
and CNN, and
CNN
they
has
all have
a
local reporters, right?
exactly. They have local reporter on ground, and whenever typically they would report protests. I think the CNN is a particular case. The CNN correspondent moved from China to Taiwan. So he has a very strong position to tout Taiwan as a beacon of democracy. I've seen his report, and every time there's something good, he has a very gloomy, very happy face in touting Taiwan as a model democracy. I think the overall US strategy in terms of their mass media is to treat KMT as a very archaic, old ruling party that's losing the people's support and losing, quote unquote, the independence movement in Taiwan. But they neglected the fact that I said it in your program before, 70% of the people voted last time. 40% voted for DPP. So if you count it, 28% of the people voted for the president, Lai. And of the 24%, not all supported his Taiwan independence movement, let alone this extremely pro-Japanese illusion or pro-US military build-out. So these do not fit their playbook. So they do not report anything that's against the playbook, especially like we're moving into a liberal democracy, like we're moving into a totalitarian police state. All of these things, typically you would say this is a human rights violation. If it happens in Hong Kong, happens in Shanghai, even 10,000 people will be a huge thing. No, actually, 1,000 people will be a huge thing. But this is 200, 300,000 people on the streets, and Western media said nothing. They turned their blind eye. They were silenced.
It's just this narrative creation, right? And this narrative control that you need to maintain in order to keep a stupid black and white idea of what a conflict is about alive. And we are actually, in a sad sense, Taiwan is just following what the Free West is doing at the moment, because right now we have elections in Romania without the major contender, who was like barred by the judicial branch from running simply because the judicial branch said he's not compatible. I mean, his ideology is not compatible with what's good for the country, which is absolutely insane. I've talked with colleagues from Poland who said Poland is cracking down on opposition. We're seeing that in Germany, the AfD now is branded officially as a ultra right-wing extremist group and on the way to be banned. I mean, this current crackdown in the West on democracy is also extending to Taiwan, isn't it?
Exactly. I think starting from the democracy in the United States is deteriorating. If you look at what happened to their system, check and balance, human rights, First Amendment rights are all being challenged. Universities are being challenged. So starting from the United States and to all the younger democracy, we're seeing the overall change of what democracy really means. And there are a lot of foundations of what that system ought to have in order to make it to work are being challenged in every single place. But also in Taiwan, I think our use of judicial system is extremely cruel. Our incarceration without communication, meaning you are being put in an extremely small cell, you cannot communicate with anybody. So all of the political leaders I just cited, they were held, they were incarcerated incommunicado, without communication. So you create extremely strong police state sense to tell people that don't you challenge me. If you do, you can be subject to such cruelty without even have solid evidence that you do anything wrong against the law, without doing anything major against the law. So we are in a terrible state. It's a combination of dilapidation of democracy as well as the increase of a police state.
So what do these protests indicate? Do you see more protests coming? Because, Taiwan, in a sense, you fought for this democracy and, the KMT was the uni
Ruling
party
party.
of the past, the ruling party that came out of had the previous dictatorships, right? And then you democratized over the last 25, 30 years, very well democratized, and now this. So do you think people are inside Taiwan are sharing your assessment, and that's what's driving the protests?
I think, unfortunately, there are generation gaps in the analysis. Most of the people who understand that this current DPP government is not democracy because we fought 30 years to make it more wide open are the ones with that historical knowledge. But the younger people who had no idea what democracy was evolving from, how many things are gradually opened up and gradually reformed, these younger people will not have that historical memory or understanding, then they don't see anything wrong with what the government is doing or what the government is telling them. So I see this generation gap not from ideological point of view, but from historical experiences. The zeitgeist of different cohorts are very, very different. Luckily, this time in the April 26th protest, we see a lot of younger people who came out and said, look, we don't understand everything, but we understand that this is not what true democracy is about. So there are more younger people coming out on April 26th. So I'm an optimist. I believe that systems should have an ability to self-correct, even though you may need to pay a lot of price, but also you need to have strong political leaders who said, okay, you may do whatever to me, but I am not afraid. I will not budge. And now we're gradually seeing people coming out. Not all within a KMT, a lot of them are outside of KMT.
Are there dissidents in the DPP who say like, look, this is not how we should do this, who
No,
support you? No?
because they are in power. None. Once you are in power, power is a very sweet thing. Power comes with status, even potential reward. DPP is now very closely tied. Even if some people believe that Tsai Ing-wen's friction did not all agree with Lai Ching-te's friction, but Tsai Ing-wen is extremely silent. She's not saying anything.
That's very sad. That's very sad. So, where should people go who want to actually read about Taiwan? What news sources do you recommend that have the most objective reporting?
Well, unfortunately, I can't think of any English source. So perhaps program like yours would be the source. You have to go beyond the major media and their playbook or their lenses. They have a particular lens to look at the world.
What's your assessment of the Taipei Times? Is that something that you recommend using as a source of what's happening, even if if it has a ideological bias?
Taipei Times has some stringers, some reporters who are good. So I would recommend people to follow individual reporter rather than just the newspaper. So Taipei Times still has some good reporters.
All right. And we will have you back on the program. Please do let me know when things are happening, because again, it's difficult actually to just know that something is happening because of
I
the
am so glad you picked this up. Nobody asked me this question. You are the only one.
we're going to spread this. We'll spread it. Joanna Lei, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Pascal.